Welcome back to Bull and Thread. Let's talk about the ambiguity effect. This is something that I run into a lot when I'm working with new and developing leaders. And the ambiguity effect is this idea that when you are trying to make a decision, you're usually dealing with a situation where it's not 100% clear the right path. It's not common that in a life and in most of our major decisions that you get everything that just lines up perfectly and everything is clear and it makes sense. Instead, most of our most important decisions have to be made in the middle of some ambiguity. Some things aren't entirely clear. But the ambiguity effect is what takes place is whenever things are increasingly ambiguous, people often choose the simple and the clear over the options that might feel a little bit more ambiguous. The problem is what's clear may not be what's best. It may not get you to the truth. It may not help you solve the puzzle or discover the literal or metaphorical treasure. That's the reality of life. So I've jotted down 5 ways to help yourself navigate ambiguity. Of course, ambiguity, we're not talking about just playing a game of flipping a coin and choosing options where you're using no logic. No, we're using logic, we're using reason, we're using observation skills. But even when you're doing all of that, sometimes people make that mistake of assuming that it's all just going to be crystal clear. And if it's not, well, then it's probably wrong. So how do we get through that? Here are some 5 tips. First one is get comfortable with the unknowns. I know this sounds like a basic one, but uncertainty is normal. That's how we have to kind of learn to live with it. And I say this as a leader of an organization, as one who has to deal with this on a regular basis. It's common, even in financial matters, where I can get great financial reports. It's common that there are some questions that I don't have answered. There are some aspects of it that I don't have answered. So you have to actually get comfortable trying to sit in a little measure of uncertainty and not let the emotion and the discomfort of that uncertainty drive you to an emotional decision. I've run into this even in situations where people would prefer a really clear, neat, tidy solution that doesn't work to a messy one that does. And that's problematic in life, in problem solving, and literal and metaphorical treasure hunting, and all sorts of areas. So get comfortable just sitting in uncertainty. Let yourself get used to it, see what it feels like, learn to think logically even when your emotions are causing you to feel uncomfortable because of the uncertainty. The second one is seek the right information, not all information. The truth is that for most major decisions, you don't have to have everything crystal clear. Figure out your priorities. What are the most important elements that you need to understand in order to know the next step or make the best decision? Sometimes you only need 20% of the information to make the best decision. Sometimes you need 80% of the information. Learn to figure that out. Learn to try to discern how much do I actually need to know? What are the actually critical pieces of information that are necessary for me to get this right? Third one then is learn to compare risks fairly. Your emotions can be really deceptive. When you're dealing with options, the one that is less clear, that has a little bit of messiness or ambiguity to it, will feel riskier to you than the one that's very clear. But that's not always true. So learn to treat them equally. Learn to recognize that the ambiguous and the clear sometimes come with comparable risks. Not always, but sometimes. Dig into that. The only way you can really figure this out is through experience, but these are some good tips to get you started. The next one then is do some small tests to reduce fear. So if you want to learn to get comfortable with the uncertainty, try some small, low-risk scenarios where you have to make decisions and there's not a lot of certainty. So in other words, you don't want to start with something that has life or limb at risk, or a lot of money at risk, or a huge time, or your reputation is at risk in a major way. Practice trying to make decisions with a measure of ambiguity and uncertainty in a place where the risks are a little bit lower, so you can get comfortable with it. You can learn to sit with it. You can learn to try it out. It will definitely make a difference for you. And then that takes me to the last one, which is to train for a kind of adaptive thinking. The best decision makers, the best treasure hunters, the best problem solvers, the best adventurers, they embrace some measure of uncertainty. And the more you practice staying calm in unclear situations, the stronger your judgment gets. Because here's the reality. When you're dealing with uncertainty, it causes your anxiety to go up sometimes, your stress level to go up, your emotion begins to kick in, that amygdala begins to kick in your brain, and it can sort of short circuit the logical thinking, your observation skills, looking for nuances that can actually make a difference and lead you in the right direction. So train for adaptive thinking. Practice staying calm in an uncertain situation. Even put yourself in uncertain situations. And what I mean by this fifth one is not always situations where you actually have to make a decision or move forward. Just put yourself in some uncertain situations and learn to just relax. And you can actually practice this. Practice breathing, practice observing, and see if you can't get a little bit more comfortable kind of being in those uncertain situations. It's an incredible skill. If you want to be a leader in an organization, even leading your family or your friends, if you want to be a better decision maker whenever other people are struggling to kind of hold it together, and if you want to really solve some big problems and discover those literal and metaphorical treasures, all of these can be really helpful skills. But it's not something that a lot of people talk about. It seems like many people think that life is sort of like a game of chess, where if you're a chess master and you can think multiple moves ahead and you play all of your moves perfectly, you're just guaranteed to win, which actually isn't the case because you don't know who you're playing and they may know the game even better than you. But Annie Duke, who wrote a book called, I think it was called Making the Bets, she talked about leadership more akin to a game of poker where you're dealt a hand and you have to play that hand to the best of your ability. You don't actually know what everyone else has in their hand, and your hand may be a good hand, it may be a bad hand, and your job is to play your hand to the best of your ability. And even if you play it perfectly, whatever that might mean, you could still lose. And there are risks associated with it. And that's why it's important to learn to navigate this reality of the ambiguity effect. If you're not comfortable dealing with some measure of ambiguity or uncertainty, you really can't be effective at a game like poker. I'm not a poker player myself, but that concept can apply to being a leader and a decision maker and a problem solver and a treasure hunter in lots of environments. So I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.